Hi guys, and welcome to this video. It is incredibly late. I'm also just filming this video late, so I can't imagine when it's even going up because it always takes me forever to edit. But here you are, here this video finally is. This is my August book wrap-up where I wrap up all the books that I read in August. So August was a readathon month. I was participating in the N.E.W.T.S readathon because I participated in the Owls back in May, and I accomplished that, did very good. I was going for the Hogwarts professor career, and I unfortunately did not pass my N.E.W.T.S. I was not able to read all the books that I was trying to read in the month of August to be able to pass my N.E.W.T.S. So I unfortunately am not going to be Hogwarts professor this year, but there's always next year. So, I'm not too butthurt about it, also because I thought I did a pretty good job reading-wise this month. These are all the books that I read in the month of August. I read a total of 7 books, which is still good for me. So, let's go on to statistics. And as always, I can never remember what statistics I do, so I just kind of go with what I think are the statistics I do. I read 2 hardcover books and 5 paperbacks. I read only 1 2019 release, so that means I read 6 backlisted books, aka books that did not come out in 2019. I read 3 books written by females, and then I read 4 books written by males. The shortest book I read, if you can even see it, was 160 pages, and then the longest book I read, which doesn't actually look that long, because it probably wasn't, was 356 pages. So I read a total of 1,795 pages, which averages to about 58 pages a day, which is perfect, because I usually try to read about 50 pages a day. So that's usually my average goal of pages per day, so I did good with that. Let's go on to genres. I read 2 fantasies, 2 contemporaries, 1 play, 1 romance, and 1 sci-fi. Now in the way of stars, this month was so good stars-wise, okay? I only have 1 3-star, 1 4-star, 2 4.5 stars, and 3 5 stars. Yes. Which averages to about 4.4 stars. I think that's the highest it's been all year, so that's super exciting. So even though I didn't pass my N.E.W.T.S, I feel like I still kind of passed a lot of my other reading goals for this year within this 1 month, so I feel pretty good about it. So the first book that I read this month is The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. This was fantastic. This is a comic or graphic novel, I'm not quite sure. I feel like it's more a graphic novel about a prince who really likes to wear dresses, so he hires a dressmaker in secret to make dresses for him so he can go out dressed as a girl in disguise sometimes. And then they end up forming this really great friendship and relationship, and it's just really cute and adorable and sweet and just loved it. The characters are super lovable as well. I was a huge fan of this book, and also the fashion in it is stunning. Let me try and find my favorite dress. Ah, there it is. Look at that dress. Gorgeous. And I also really enjoyed the art style. I thought it complemented the type of story really well. It's just a very simple comic style of drawing. And I really liked the ending. I thought it was a great just relationship story, but also a story of acceptance. And yeah, really loved this one. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was The Comedy of Errors by William Shakespeare. If you've been here, you know I've been trying to read 1 Shakespeare play a month, and I've so far been pretty good with it. I think I only missed 1 month, but this is the one I read for this month. I've been really enjoying his comedy, so I wanted to keep it going. I really liked this one. It's definitely a favorite of mine. It's a typical Shakespeare type story, I feel like, with mistaken identities. We have 2 people named Antiopolis and 2 people named Dromio. Both of the Antiopolises are royal figures in their town or whatever, and then both Dromios are the right-hand men. I can't speak. Both the Dromios are the right-hand men to Antiopolis. It's hard to explain. They both end up being in the same town, at the same time, and people keep mistaking them for the other person, and they start thinking that they're crazy or something's just like wrong. So a lot of shenanigans ensue from that, and it's really quite funny. And this is definitely one I want to see performed live, and I found out a friend of mine is going to be in the Comedy of Errors where he lives. It's a totally different state than where I live, so I may have to try and find some way to get there to watch him in one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. Anyway, so this is a favorite Shakespeare play. It's not 5 stars, but I did enjoy it, so I'm giving it 4 stars. The next book I read is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. Finally, I have been trying to read this book for the longest time, and I finally got to it. I'm so happy, and I really enjoyed this. I just love Leigh Bardugo's writing. I have read her Six of Crows duology, and I do think the writing in that so far is better. This is her first book, I believe, so I can understand the writing being a little bit more juvenile and not as complex as Six of Crows was, but still very enjoyable. So this is the first book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, which takes place in the Grishaverse. She writes a lot of books that take place in the Grishaverse, and this is the first series within the Grishaverse. I did read them out of order, but it's totally fine to do that. But we follow Alina Starkov, who finds out she is a Grisha, and she is a very rare Grisha that no one has really seen in a while. She can like produce light or something, and so people see her as like the savior of their land. Her light could probably get rid of this dark part of the land. She starts working with the Darkling to kind of like help her with her powers and, you know, save the land kind of a thing. But then she starts realizing there's more to it than just that, and the Darkling isn't who he seems he is, and she starts figuring out more things about the past and about her powers and about Grisha in general, and there's just a lot of politics and drama involved, and it's super fun, super great. I could not put this book down. Like I said, with Leigh Bardugo's writing, I love it. Her style is so unique and so descriptive, and just really keeps you enraptured, I think is like the word that I'm thinking of. I also just really love the world of Grisha. It's very much like Russian inspired, and like it kind of reminds me almost of like, you know, the movie Anastasia? It kind of reminds me of like that type of world, but just a little bit darker and with a lot more like magical powers involved with it. So yeah, very like Russian inspired and very unique, and I love this world. I really enjoyed the plot. It was really, I was able to keep my attention, and it had a lot of drama. There was also a lot of like sexy times. Not like too sexy, like PG-13 sexy, but still like sexy enough to just be like, ooh, hello, even though I feel like I shouldn't be feeling this way right now because of things and reasons. Right now I'm finding the main character just a little bit boring, but I'm hoping that as the series progresses, she becomes a little bit more badass and a little bit more like interesting. I have a feeling she will. I think just with this first book, she's still like coming to terms with what's going on, and so she's just very like what and naive and just whatever. So I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. Cannot wait for the second one. The next book I read, Saga, Volume 9. So far this is the last of the volumes out, and I don't know when they're gonna come out with the next volume, but all I know is I need it. So this is a graphic novel series. Obviously it's the 9th volume in the series. It's a very sci-fi Romeo-Juliet-esque, but more centered on like a war and killing. There's lots of killing in like every book. And it's all like very graphic, so I will say this is definitely like an R-rated series. You must be 18 years or older to read this because it's very graphic. Very graphic. And not just like war and bloody graphic, but like also sexy graphic. This is just a really great series. It started off really well for me. Somewhere around the middle it kind of just like had a little dip. It did a lot of the series. It went a lot of like up and then down and then up and then down. This is definitely an up. A really great book, and I don't know when the next book comes out, but I need it. I need it so bad. Especially with how this ended, I cried so hard. I don't want to give away the ending, but it's super sad. And this one was super action-packed. It had a lot going for it. Anyway, yeah, really enjoyed this installment. I want the next one. This was 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read, Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. Can you even see it? There you go. Now you can see it. It's so shiny. This is a story that's written in prose about a kid whose brother was just murdered, and so now he's taking the elevator to go and exact revenge on his brother's murderer. This whole book takes place within about, I want to say like 60 seconds. It takes place throughout the entire elevator ride, and it was not what I was expecting. And to be honest, I was a little bored by it. What I wasn't expecting with this book was like the magical realism element, and I'm not a huge magical realism type of person. Like, I don't mind it when it's like, you know, witches and wizards, Harry Potter magical realism in a sense, but like when it's, I don't know how to explain it without giving anything away, but like, I was not expecting the magical realism that came with this book, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. And I also don't think the prose style really worked for this type of story. It made it kind of confusing, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on, and I didn't understand the ending. And I know this has won like so many awards, and this was a 5-star prediction, but I wasn't a huge fan of this. I'm not saying it's bad, it wasn't bad. It just, I don't think it's what I was expecting. And so that kind of threw me off, which then threw me off for the entire book. Anyway, I don't want to say like I hated this book, because I didn't hate this book. It's just not one I think I'll ever return to or remember. But I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, and this edition includes Peter and Wendy and Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens. So this edition included 2 different Peter Pan stories. I'm mainly going to talk about Peter and Wendy, since that's the main like Peter Pan story that everyone knows and loves. Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens is kind of like a prequel to Peter and Wendy. It's like how Peter Pan like came to be at Neverland, and like his whole story about getting to Neverland, which I was not a fan of. I did not like Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens. I'm sorry. I liked like the last 2 chapters of that story, but the whole beginning was just so boring for me. Anyway, we're going to focus on Peter and Wendy. I'm not even going to give a synopsis of Peter Pan, because I feel like everyone knows the story of Peter Pan at this point. It's about a boy who never grows up. He lives in Neverland. He fights pirates and Indians, and he lives with a bunch of other lost boys. Like, everyone's just fighting each other on this island, and there's also fairies and mermaids and whatnot. I loved this book. I absolutely loved this. I do like the story of Peter Pan in general. Like, I liked the movie Peter Pan, I like Hook, I like all these like movies that are based off of Peter Pan and stuff. Like, I like the story of Peter Pan. I've never read the book though until now, and I think I like the book as much as I like the movies, maybe even more. So I thought it was like a different experience reading it than you get from watching it. It's just a really great like imagination type of book. Like this, he let his imagination run wild, and I loved it. The way it's written is just so fantastical and whimsical, and it's, I don't know, it's like almost like lyrically written. It's really interesting. However, since this was written like 100 years ago, some of the Native American stuff is a little like offensive and a little touchy, but the rest of the story really holds up, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read is Field Notes on Love by Jennifer E. Smith. Jennifer E. Smith is one of my favorite authors, but it's not like her books are fantastic. Her books are just really easy to read, and they're super fun, super cute. She writes a lot of like rom-coms, and I love that. They can really help me get out of a reading slump. They're really cute and lovable. I just really like it. And so this one was her newest one. This is about a boy named Hugo who was just dumped, and his girlfriend who dumped him, they had planned to do this train ride across America together to go to college. So since she dumped him right before this trip was supposed to happen, she's just like, you know what, you can have the trip. And so since the trip is all in her name, he can't cancel it, but then he also can't go on it by himself. So he ends up looking for someone with the same name as his girlfriend to go on this trip with him. He ends up finding her, Her name is May, and she has just found out that she's been rejected from her main college that she wanted to go to, so she decides to go on an adventure to kind of take the criticism of her film to heart and really experience life. So she says yes to going on this train ride across the country with this guy, and they end up forming a really great romance along the way, and it's super cute. And of course, with every romance, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be some conflict along the way. But anyway, that is pretty much the premise. It's a long premise. It was so cute and adorable. I loved it. It's very light and fluffy, and that's what I love about her books so much. And this was just another book I could not put down. I think I read it within 2 days. Or did I do it within one sitting? I think I read 50 pages, and then the next day I read the rest of the book. It was a really fast read. I thought it was a really great journey with really great characters, and I loved their whole thought process through this whole trip, and kind of turning the trip into a documentary of sorts. It's very simple, but it's super cute, and I could totally see this being a movie. I would really like to make this a movie. Anyway, 4.5 stars. And that is it for the books that I read this month. You can also check out the movies that I watched in the month of August, as well as just my life wrap up for August in general. I never know how to explain that, but yeah. But anyways, I will see you guys later with more videos.